What's up, YouTube? This is Boxingwave, and I wanted to do a quick recap of the Terrence Crawford David Avanesyan fight. All right. So I ordered the pay-per-view on BLK Prime, and I did it a couple days ago, but I wasn't able to watch the fight last night because I was at the Terrence Crawford. I mean, not the Terrence Crawford, the Teofimo Lopez fight at Madison Square Garden last night. So I was able to watch it, but good thing is if you order the pay-per-view on BLK Prime, you'll be able to go back and watch it like The Zone or Fight TV. It's not like the pay-per-view where you have to actually order it and watch it live to be able to have access to it. You can always go back and just pull it up if you paid for the service, all right? You just got to create an account with BLK Prime or whatever, and I did that. All right, so I was able to watch the fight this morning. Right? I already knew the outcome. I knew that David Avanesyan got knocked out. I actually put a bet that he would do it within rounds 1 through 6. I think it was like a plus 125 or 225 or something like that. So I was able to make some of the money back from my Josh Warrington losses. All right, but yo, let's talk about the fight. All right, and I didn't watch the whole card. I haven't had time to watch the whole card yet. But I did watch a little bit of the Chris Cyborg fight, and then I kind of fast forwarded up to the Terrence Crawford, or at least a little bit before that, because I wanted to see the production of BLK Prime, being that I've never had access to BLK Prime. I've never used the service before. With that being said, production seemed pretty solid. I didn't really have an issue with it. They had Paulie Malignaggi doing commentary. They had Antonio Tarver there as well. You know, people that faces that we are familiar with. I think Malignaggi, you know, depending on, regardless of how you feel about him as a person, I think he has some of the best boxing knowledge out there when it comes to just straight boxing talk. You know, I think he gives great commentary, and he talks about what's going on in the fight. But yeah, him and Tarver was good. And I heard Blue Blood, they was asking Blue Blood in between each round or a few rounds, you know, what he had it scored, which is cool. It's cool to see another YouTuber, you know, just getting the opportunity to be out there, you know. And from what I heard, he was part of making this fight happen between Crawford, or this deal happen with BLK Prime. All right, but let's talk about the fight. So I started watching the fight, and I was like, you know, the first few rounds, I can tell that Bud is a little rusty, you know. I can just tell. He looks like a guy that hasn't fought in a bit, you know. And I've seen Crawford fight so many times that I knew he was going to come out with this, like, you know, in a breakdown I said this. I know he was going to probe a lot and use, you know, just control the distance. I knew David Avanesyan, he fights out of a high guard, and he does really quick, you know, counters, overhand rights over your jab. You know what I'm saying? Overhand rights and lefts. He does switch a little bit. And he comes forward. You know, he doesn't have long arms. He likes to be mid-range, close range. You know, and that's exactly what happened with Josh Kelly. The differences with here was the probing, the amount of level changing from Crawford. Crawford's always is sticking something out there. All right. And he's changing the speed of it. And he's also changing the power of it. You know, every once in a while, he'll hit you with 2 stiff power jabs back to back. But most of the time, he's just probing and moving and changing levels. He's going to the body. He's using that lead hand to, you know, keep it out there and measure and stabbing you to the body. Whether it's lefty, righty, he's just changing. You know, he's changing stance. He's doing a whole lot. David Avanesyan is quick. He's able to catch you with some of those overhand rights, you know, some of those wide hooks. He was able to catch Bud with a few of them, you know. In every round, he caught Bud with like 1 or 2 good shots. Some of the better shots in the round at times. But I don't think that outside of the couple shots that David would land in each round, I don't think it was enough to give him the rounds, really. You know, because because Bud was still in control each round. Bud was landing at will, you know. And when he wasn't landing, yes, he was a lot of shots. David was blocking and parrying and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, Bud was always in control. And each round, like especially maybe around the fifth round, I think fifth round is when Bud started to change the way the punches were getting thrown. He was punching with more intent by the fifth round, and I think he started out in the sixth round really putting the power down and adding to the speed, and he catches David Avanesyan. I can't remember what punch David was throwing, but Bud countered with an uppercut and then followed it up with the left hook. And the thing about these shots, they don't look like the most powerful punches. They don't look, it kind of reminds me of the shots that Bud landed against Sean Porter and Kell Brook, especially Kell Brook. That hook that he connected with Kell Brook was so quick, it didn't look as powerful, but Kell was badly hurt by it. And it looked the same way with David. The uppercut looked like it stung, but it's the left hand that was following it that really, the hook, or I don't know if it was a right or left, but it was the hook that really put David on his ass. And those be those sneaky punches that Bud catches you with. He's not coming forward and throwing heavy, heavy hands, punch after punch. He's not doing it that way. It's the sneaky combos that he catches you with that hurt you and puts you away. And David did a good job. It's just that we already know, if you watch my breakdown, you knew what he was coming with. Not that he's a bad fighter. I think he does give Keith Thurman a hard fight. I think David Avanesyan would be a hard fight for Keith Thurman. I think he'll be a hard fight. I don't think it'll be a hard fight for Spence. I don't think it'll be too much trouble for Jerron Boots Ennis. All right. But I think for certain fighters, he would be a difficult fight because of his style, because of that high guard. All right. And the power and the explosiveness behind some of his punches. He was able to get inside at periods and land some short shots against Bud, even landing combos at times. He did catch Bud in some good spots. But Bud I felt like Bud, there's levels in the way he wants to fight. And then I think this is my only problem with the fight. I don't have any problem with David because I'm well aware of who he is. I know a lot of people didn't know who he was before this fight. I'm well aware of who he is. And I do believe that on the tail end of the welterweight division, he is a top 10 welterweight. He's coming off of 6 knockout wins. I know he stopped Josh Kelly good. But with that being said, I feel like Terrence Crawford, we've seen him fight at this level, and this is the point that I was making. Not that it's a bad fight. It's just that I know the outcome of the fight already because I've seen him fight guys on this level and beat guys on this level constantly, the top 3 fights, I think, from at welterweight right now, the top 3 would be Spence, Boots, and Ortiz Jr. I know Keith Thurman has a name still. I know he's the most accomplished. I know he's a former unified champion, but I don't think it's a harder fight for Bud right now. And I think that's a good name, but it'll be same along the lines of him fighting an older Amir Khan, a Kell Brook that had been stopped by Spence and Triple G, and fighting Sean Porter, who, well, I didn't have no issues with Sean Porter, to be honest. I thought Sean Porter was still good at the time that Bud fought. So I'm not going to go there. But I do, acknowledge that Kell Brook had already been stopped, and he hasn't looked in his prime. I don't think he was in his absolute prime. I thought he was in great shape when he fought Bud. And I thought Bud would have beat him anyway. But, at the end of the day, if Bud were to fight Keith Thurman and beat Keith Thurman, he's not going to get credit for it, He's not going to get credit for it. Now, I know a lot of Spence supporters, if Spence is going to go and fight Keith Thurman, if Spence is going to go and stop Keith Thurman, which I think will happen, they're going to praise the win. But they wouldn't praise it for Bud, and that's kind of how fans work, right? But fans are fans at the end of the day. You can't read too deep into it. With that being said, Bud Crawford, the reason why I feel like Bud Crawford is the best fighter in the world, right? The reason why I say that, and I'm basing it because I think pound for pound, the core is basing it off accomplishments, but basing it off who you believe is the most talented fighter in the world, right? I think Bud Crawford adjusts. My reasoning on why I think he's the best is because I think he adjusts better than any fighter that's currently boxing. Okay? He adjusts. He's not also the most versatile, but I think he adjusts better than any other fighter that's actively fighting, you know? And whether he's winning, whether he's losing, he tunes himself as the fight goes on. I said to you guys the other day, in order to beat Terrence Crawford, you have to switch with him. You cannot come and whatever's working for you, Kell Brook, Sean Porter, all right, even Jose Benavides, who was giving Bud trouble with his counters. You have to keep retuning yourself as the fight goes on. And I haven't seen Bud do that against a fighter yet. Part of the reason why I always gave him the edge towards Spence is because Spence does what he does well, but he does what he does all the time. Now, it's worked for him up to this point, but I haven't seen him make many adjustments in his fights. You know where he's coming with. We know he's going to throw a lot of jabs. He has an excellent jab. We know that he's going to come to the body. We know his work rate is crazy. All right? It's more about the punches you don't see coming from the angles you don't expect them to come from. And I think that's what gives Spence the most trouble if they were to fight. The problem and the only problem, and it's a gift and a curse with Bud, because as he's processing his opponent, as time goes on, he starts off slow. And you saw that in this fight. And I think some of it has to do to be with by choice. But in the Velasquez fight, a fight where he didn't start so slow, we saw how much he can actually get hit by big shots. He ate a lot of big shots in that fight. And that's what happens when he starts fast. I just think he's a slow starter. And he will always be a slow starter. And guys like Spence, Boots, and Virgil Ortiz, those three, because those are the three that I think are the most dangerous for Bud at that division. Those three start very fast. Very fast. Spence is, we already know how relentless he is. There's no way Bud is winning those first few rounds against Spence. He's given up at least 2 rounds to Spence out the gate. Spence wins if Bud can never fully get it together. You know what I'm saying? That's how Spence wins, in my opinion. Same thing with Boots. Boots is starting out fast, and he's throwing big power. You know what I'm saying? He's a big man that can switch too and give you all kind of angles as well. He's not as traditional as Errol Spence. He's not as fundamentally sound as Errol Spence. He's a lot more unorthodox, which makes him dangerous, even more dangerous, because I don't know what he's fully capable of yet. I don't think any of us do. That's what makes Boots the most dangerous, in my opinion, because I don't know how good he really is. I know how good he looks right now. He's the most dangerous. Virgil fought better fighters already, but I don't think Virgil is more talented than Boots. But Virgil comes out fast with power, with speed, and pressure. But the problem with Virgil is he's more traditional, like Spence. You kind of know what he's going to do, you know. He's not as unorthodox as a Boots Ennis, but he's going to come out fast against Bud. And when you watch the Avanesyan fight and you look at it and you critique Bud, which I am doing, because, you know, I'm a Bud. I love Bud, but we got to critique him. If Bud is in a position that he would in the fight last night against some of these other guys, he wouldn't be winning these rounds, these earlier rounds. You know, now he might change it around like he did against Porter, because the Porter fight was very close up into the knockdown. You know, some people even think that Porter was up like a round or so. These guys, if they're in the same position, if they're as close as Avanesyan was at points in this fight, then they can give Bud problems. But, and I was listening to Regis Prograve's interview, he felt like there was times where Bud was kind of toying with him. You know, yes, Avanesyan was close, but Bud looked very comfortable even when he was getting connected with certain shots. I also feel that Bud wasn't doing much as far as his legs in this fight because he was very comfortable with David Avanesyan being close. You notice that David Avanesyan was probably landing more shots while he was close range, those short shots. But if you notice, the more effective shots that he landed was the ones that where he was further out, throwing those looping shots around Crawford's jab. You know, Crawford would be a little bit lazy with the jab sometimes, and he got countered for it. Those were the cleaner shots that David was landing. Even though David wanted to be on the inside, Crawford was still better than him on the inside. And I don't think the punches that David landed on the inside were as effective as the outside ones. Part of the reason why Crawford allowed him to be that close. But if you watch the Jeff Horn fight, you know, or you watch some of the other fights Crawford has been involved in, watch Jeff Horn. Look at how aggressive Jeff Horn was, and look how much Crawford moved in that fight. You guys gotta remember, if you see someone that close on Bud, it's not because he can't shake them off. He can. Look at the Horn fight. Look at the Felix Diaz fight. He can move when he pleases. In a Spence fight, he's going to move. In a Ortiz or a Boots fight, he's going to move. Those are more dangerous fights. So he's going to be doing what he's been doing by probing, you know, and touching his opponent with a jab like he did against Felix Diaz, like he did against Jeff Horn and all of these other boxers. But he changes it up with every opponent based on how he sees it and based how the fight is going. So it's easy to critique him because he can always do things better. But the best thing about Crawford, and the reason why I believe that a lot of people have him as number one, is because he's able to take full advantage of your strengths and your weaknesses for him. And not many fighters do that. I was recently doing film study on Naoya Inoue leading up to this Paul Butler fight. Offensively, he is just an offensive weapon. I think if you just look at the way he dominates his opponents and how powerful he is and how fast he is and how good of a boxer he is, I can never argue if somebody says that he's number one. Because I see exactly what you're looking at. The one strength that I don't feel that he has over Bud is I don't feel like his level, his game and level of adjustments that he can make is on the level of Bud. Bud, I don't think he is the puncher pound for pound that Inoue is. I think Inoue is a little bit more of a puncher. I even think Inoue is faster and all of these things. But Bud makes these really good fighters look ordinary by exploiting their weaknesses every single time. You know, he's playing chess where Inoue is just athletically just way superior than all of these guys. You know what I'm saying? Canelo is another guy that I think is an amazing adjuster, but he hasn't always adjusted so well. He didn't adjust to Bivol. I think there's things that if they are going to have their rematch, I don't think he beats Bivol, but I think there are things that he can do better. You know, maybe he needed to take the L for him to see. But while he was in there that night, as good as he is at adjusting, I think there are some times where he kind of just wants to do what he thinks is going to work and stick to him. I think if Bud was in there and Bud was a 175 pounder, it would have been a different fight. Because if Bud was losing, he would have just been changing things. He would have been doing different things. He would have been changing stances. You know, so, and I'm only naming guys that are are like considered to be pound for pound. Like Usyk. Usyk is a great counter puncher. He has probably the best, or one of the best, when it comes to stamina, and outworking his fighters and being so athletic. And he's great at adjusting and exploiting weaknesses too. Offensively, I think guys like Inoue and Crawford are a little better than Usyk. I think Usyk is very smart though. But I think that offensively, I think Crawford it brings more offense, and I think Inoue definitely brings more offense. I think I'm only naming like the guys that I consider. I think Spence is like right underneath those other four: Crawford, Canelo, Inoue, and Usyk. Whatever order you want to put it. I don't argue no more. Like whatever you guys have it, I don't care. But I think all of them have their certain strengths. And I think with Bud's strengths, I think he is the best at making the adjustments, and he's smart. You know what I'm saying? I think he's the most well-rounded, the most versatile out of those top 4 or 5 top tier guys. All right? In my opinion. Some people is going to say Fury, whatever. It's cool. All right. But anyway, what's gonna happen next? Well, I hope it's Spence. I've been hoping it was Spence. Hopefully they can get the business together. Send over a realistic contract. I hear all the criticisms of Bud not taking the contract. I think a guy of his caliber and a guy of Spence caliber, and if they can just turn the whole boxing world upside down, that means that they can make some money. They can make some money. Spence and Bud can make some money. People will pay for the pay-per-view. And I think guys on their caliber are owed a guarantee and some money on the back end. They are owed that. Those two are owed it. Not just Bud and not just Spence. The two of them are owed that. I know Spence is with Al Heyman, so he has to go whatever Al is. He's with Al. Whatever Al says goes with him. Doesn't mean that everybody that has the freedom to not agree with it should agree with it. I know a lot of people are saying, well, Bud says he's agreed with everything. Why is he not taking the fight? Well, the answer is that it's simple. He told you. He wanted to see, well, if I'm not going to get the guarantee, if I'm not going to get anything up front, at least show me where the money is going. I want transparency. That was his answer. People are asking it now, but he gave you the answer already. He said, listen, if I'm going to agree to taking a lower portion of the money with Spence, if I'm going to agree to make everything on the back end, can you at least show me and provide to me where is this money going? Where is the money going? If we're not going to agree to that, show me exactly where the money is going. And that seemed to be the thing that they both couldn't agree on doing. All right. With that being said, I'm out of here. I will be back to talk more about this. I wanted to do it live because I know you guys have a lot of questions, but I'll read the comments and we'll be back. I gotta head out for real. I'm out. Y'all have a good day and peace. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, smash the like button. I'll see you guys on the next one.